Hey guys, this is the Hard Time Strongmen podcast, training up a better class of man. And today we are bringing you our land nav crash course. So our crash course on land nav, we've tried land nav a couple times now, and we haven't really found the happy medium of how we want to do it. So we're running through our Ranger Handbook abridged, and that's about as much as I can handle for reading through an Army FM for you guys. So the way we're going to attempt this class is basically giving you hip bucket training. So like when we were team leaders, I'm going to pull out my little green book and we're just going to hit the highlights, everything that you guys need to know in theory to get off the ground with land nav. But first, some housekeeping. So we've had a lot of developments, a lot of exciting developments in the show, in the business, and we've just grown so quickly, so definitively that it's a huge honor for us to have so many of you guys listening to us and to see this outreach and see these DMs from people talking about how we felt, how they like the show and everything. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. And in that progression, we have opened up a Patreon, a Discord, a Substack. You can find all those links in our link tree. But the Patreon, as it stands now, mainly is a backup for all of our podcast episodes. So those are free for anybody. Those are public. Anybody can go on our Patreon and they can find our episodes. In the future, our episodes starting, with this episode this Saturday, your datasode. At the time of this recording, it'll be the 29th, right? Right.
So we'll already release the datasode.
Right.
So this will just be the follow-up.
Right. So from now going into the future, all of our patrons will get our episodes one day early at least. So they'll get our content earlier. At the very least, they'll have ad-free episodes. So you won't hear from sponsors. You'll just have content. And what else? What else are we offering people?
On top of the ad-free content, we're also going to have Patreon exclusive episodes. We're going to have deep dives, stuff that we just don't want to ruin your attention span during these episodes. So we'll have like the full onslaught. Hope you took your Adderall because you're going to need it to stay awake because there's going to be so much information. It's going to be like an 8-hour class.
Buckle up, here we go kind of thing.
So yeah, buckle up, here we go. But no, we're going to be offering that stuff. I know we're discussing adding different tiers, allowing you guys to directly steer the content. Right. So we're working that out. But for right now, yeah, that's about where we're at with the early release episodes, pre and post show.
Yeah, and with the Patreon exclusive episodes, the point of the business, the point of this podcast is to train a better class of man, right? So our focus has been not necessarily on guys who are already spun up, ready to go. A lot of it has been kind of grassroots, from the ground up. We're building a foundation for people to build up the skill set on. So that demands a certain style, a certain type of content. And we can't get into as much detail as we would like with a lot of these things. We can't do these deep dives into all the hows, all the whys, all the rabbit trails. It kind of has to, fit and apply to as many people as we possibly can. So there's just another avenue, another opportunity for us to really dig into the things that we're passionate about. And then the only other thing I really wanted to shout out was our Discord. So we made a Discord server. This is our community of like-minded individuals where we can all talk, hash things out, ask questions, and all get better together. So super excited about that. All those links will be in the description. But for right now, let's get into it. So land nav crash course, our reference for today is FM 3-25.26, map reading and land navigation.
Yeah, with that being said, we're rolling the book out.
So this is everything. So funny thing happens when you actually join the Army is you don't really read from an FM that much. Your team leader, your squad leader might tell you to, but then you'll just get hit pocket training on it later. So It is what it
Exactly.
is. Great to reference, great to know, but let's get into the nitty gritty. So, what is land nav?
So, land navigation is, by definition, the process of using a compass, establishing a pace count, and utilizing the information about distance and degree between two designated points to navigate a predetermined path from beginning to end. In short, it's finding your
You
way.
navigate on the land.
Yep. You use the tools that you would normally use for navigation to find your way between 2 points, and hopefully you make it to the right one.
Right. So,
As anyone who has done Nightland Nav, you know that doesn't always
I'm
happen.
talking about like land nav. Not now. It can't hurt me today. Not in this class.
Yeah,
In a later
not in this
class,
class.
yes. Not right now. So, utilizing your compass, whether that's, there's several different types of compasses, but utilizing your
There
compass,
is.
utilizing your map. A map is a graphical representation of the Earth's surface drawn to scale as seen from above. So, it is your snapshot of your area of operations, where you are. So, utilizing your compass, you are, one, focused on figuring out where you are, your location, right? Then you're
Mhm.
focusing on a secondary location, whether that's, your rally point, whether that's your actual mission area, whether that's a cache, whether that's fill in the blank, and then how you're actually going to get from A to B. Not as simple as simply going in a straight line, because a lot of other factors are coming into play here, but that's what you're working with. Specifically, when we're talking about maps, we are talking about military maps, what we used when we were in the service, right? So these maps were, I think they're generally modeled off of the UTM maps, so the Universal Transverse Mercator maps, but they had the MGRS, the Military Grid Reference System, superimposed onto that map. So basically, all that is your UTM and UPS maps with this grid, this MGRS superimposed on top of it, so that you can use this grid to provide coordinates for anywhere on the globe.
And because these are military maps, it was always stressed that these are sensitive documents. You do not want to lose these. You do not want these to fall into anyone else's hands that they shouldn't be in, i.e., the Taliban, the enemy,
Right.
whoever. But as such, it was always emphasized to have security, retain possession of your map. And that still applies to you guys, because if you don't, it essentially means that you've lost your map and you could be screwed at that point. So
Well, not
definitely,
just you, but
definitely maintain security
not
in
just
your map.
you and your buddies. I mean, what do you do
Right.
with your map, right?
Right. Unless you have,
If you don't memorize every single point that you need to remember on that map, you mark it. So if you have
right.
marked your headquarters element, a supply line,
Ooh.
a cache,
Oh,
all of that, troop movements, that not as much most of the time. When we were in, we would use like laminated sheets of paper with like a map marker, so you could rub it off with an
yep.
alcohol powder, something. But that might not be your context. So always, always, always keep control of that map. If you cannot, for whatever reason, it needs to be destroyed to where no one can read it. That is a huge security concern. I know that in the past we've talked about enemy prisoner of war. The 5S is just your procedures for taking in that prisoner of war. Actually, searching them will do in a different class, but maps are highly, highly sought after, highly valuable for their
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. So, moving on. Thanks a lot, Six.
So, yeah, here for you. But 90, I want to say 95% of the time that we dealt with the MGRS, the Military Grid Reference System, we were giving out 8 to 10 digit grids. Sometimes you'd use 6, but that is basically just like getting you into the general
I'd say
area.
8 hard and fast. There's no real point in doing a 10-digit grid for what it's
Yeah.
worth.
Not unless you're calling for
Yeah.
fire. Like, then hell, I'd do a 12-digit grid if it came down
They'll
to
miss
it.
anyways.
I don't. Yeah, I don't trust artillery to save my life because I don't. Anyway, these grid coordinates, especially the first four, uh, were specific to an area of the globe
Right. So,
because
sorry, didn't mean to step on your toes, man. But
you're
specifically,
good, man.
so breaking it down, we'll have visuals for you guys on our Instagram page. Actually breaking down
Yep.
this grid account, what it looks like. But to start off, so an example of a grid that you would get would be something like 1-8 Tango, Victor Juliet, 1-2 Tree, 4-5 6 7 8. And the great thing about military grids is that no matter what branch you're in, no matter if you're the lowliest private up to higher echelons of leadership, you have something to work with there. It is standardized.
Yes.
So the beginning of that, so the first two numbers, then the letter, right? So 1-8 Tango. So that is your grid zone designator. So using MGRS, the world is divided into 60 grid zones. So right there, we have narrowed down our search area. So your grid zone designator and your 100,000 meter square. So 100,000 meter square, following the grid zone designator, are your two letters and just first. So your 100,000 meter square, following the first two numbers and the letter are the second two letters. So first letter being your column and your second letter being your row. So your northings and your eastings. So 1-8 Tango, then Victor Juliet, narrows it down even further. So your grid zone designator and your 100,000 meter square are the only two components in the system that reference definitive squares, right? So you hear that, you can reference, a map of the globe with the MGRS, and you have a general idea of where, this is taking place. Everything after that, that's, dependent, but these are your big, bigger picture, hey, this is where we're at kind of thing.
Yeah, it basically puts you in the country that you could be in, more or less.
So one grid square is equal to 1,000 meters, or a kilometer, right? And what you alluded to earlier, 6. So if I were to give you a 4-digit grid, that's a click. That's 1,000 meter box. If I gave you a 6-digit grid, that would narrow down to 100 meters. 8-digit grid down to 10 meters, and a 10-digit grid down to 1 meter anywhere on the globe.
All those are squared.
Yes, squared. Thank you.
Yes. Just want
really
to throw
hurts
that
that you
out
had to clarify
because
that. But
1 kilometer is very, very different from a square kilometer.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just want to throw that out there because I got to throw out the personal experience, because when we were at our NTC rotation going into Afghanistan, and we were in a movement, mounted movement, and these motherfuckers called in what was it? A 6-digit grid that they said that they hit with artillery. That is a lot. That is a massive, massive area to hit with artillery. And they did it just to take us out.
Well, if it works, it works.
Right. And it's just like, as soon as we heard the OCs call that in, we were just like, what?
But why?
They hit an entire grid square? Do they have that many shells? Like, what the hell?
What commander okayed that? So in practice, when we're talking about these 8-digit, 6-digit, 4-digit grids. That example I gave you earlier. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you're reading to the right and up when you're actually looking at your map. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you're reading that first. So you'd pan over, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, you'd pan up. We will give you guys visuals. We know this is extremely hard to grasp, to understand, over just our voice, but we will give you the tools in our Instagram.
I can understand how that'd be completely like against how you think it would. I mean, normal people read, of course, left to right, so you got at least that much right. But then to go up from there,
Right. You think it'd be down.
the normal person would think it'd be down, right? Yeah, but no, it's the exact opposite. You read left to right, south to north.
All right. And map scale. So when we're talking about map scale, we're talking about map distance divided by ground distance. So what you see on the map represented by what is actually on the ground. So small scale map is typically 1 to 1 million. What you see on your map is essentially
A state.
no,
I mean,
1 to 1 million.
Yeah.
No, it's like a continent.
Well, 1 to 1 million.
You said continent, right?
Oh, right. No, you're right. Yeah, so 1 to 1 million would essentially be the size of the United States.
Right. 1 to 75,000. So that's your medium scale map. That's roughly the size of a state.
That's the size of the state. Yeah.
And then a large scale map, what we normally use, what junior leaders use. So it's your quote unquote tactical size map. That's more the size of a county. So where you'll actually be able to have actionable information on that is your large scale, but is your small scale picture.
Right.
And then actually looking at your map. So the colors on a map: blue, green, black, red, brown, and brown. So blue is water. That is your aquatics, your lakes, your streams, your bodies of water. Green is your vegetation. Different shades, different densities. Fairly simple, fairly intuitive. Black are man-made features. So roads, railroad tracks, building clusters, things of that nature. Red, brown, that is your contour line. So contour lines, how we represent depth, shape, terrain features. It's got brown mixed into it so that you're able to observe that while under a red light.
Damn it.
You thought I was going to
mention that.
Really?
I did.
Goodness. And red.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you know why it's red brown?
And red, your main rows and boundaries. Keep in mind that if something is only red, it's going to be washed out if you're only using red light.
Right. And that's why those are in the color red, because they're not as important as the other stuff.
All right, so you want to hit our 5 major terrain features?
Sure. So the 5 major terrain features, the acronym that we always learned it by was HVRSD. So we always said that as hidden valley, rich salad dressing. So those are your hills, your valleys, your ridges, your saddles, and your depressions. So of course we all know what a hill is. Hill is just an area of high ground. It's seen on a map as contour lines forming concentric circles. So they're just circling up. You're going upwards, and they just get smaller and smaller and smaller in size.
The smallest
that indicates that you're going.
Sorry, indicates you're going up. The smallest circle is the peak.
Correct. The last one you see is the peak. Following that, we have your valleys. So these are stretched out grooves in the land, formed usually by streams or rivers over time. And these usually have running water coursing through it. Contour lines are usually in the shape of a U or a V.
So when you think of a valley, 3 sides of the valley are high ground. So there's 3 sides that are higher elevation. There's 1 side that is lower elevation. Everything is sloping down.
After that, we have ridge. This is a sloping line of high ground. These contour lines are formed. Contour lines forming a ridge are normally a U or a V shaped, so it's the exact opposite of your valleys. After that is your saddle. That's a low point between two areas of higher ground, so it's usually the area between two hills. You can usually see it because it looks like some boobs. That's how we learned it.
Or an hourglass figure.
Or an hourglass figure, sure.
It looks like boobs.
Or boobs, yeah. After that, we have our depression. So that's where we're all at in life right now. No, it's actually a low point in the ground. It's a hole.
You're not helping.
I couldn't help it, dude. I had to. How could I not hit that? Like, seriously. But for real, if you are having any sort of amount of depression, get it worked on.
The rules bear with you in it.
Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled program.
We'll put a link in the description.
This week's episode is brought to you by FieldSeats.com. FieldSeats.com is an e-commerce, federally licensed firearms dealer. They provide virtual reviews on brand new firearms, optics, and gear, where at the end of the review, they give away the item being reviewed to an attendee.
Currently, they've got reviews ranging from the Shadow Systems MR920 for $35, the Springfield M1A for $65, or Chichicon ACOG with RMR for $60. Each review has limited seating, so your chances of winning the giveaway are that much higher.
Check out FieldSeats.com to purchase your reviews and enter to win the item being reviewed, and use code STRONGMEN to get 10% off your order.
Be sure to check out their Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at field_seats for updates on products and other tips and info.
Use code STRONGMEN to receive 10% off your entire purchase at FieldSeats.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Thanks for listening, guys. Now back to the episode. Stay in the fight.
So a depression is a low point in the ground. It's essentially a hole. It's defilade. It's represented by closed contour lines, tick marks pointing downward towards the low ground.
So it'll look. So looking at depression, it's sort of whatever the shape your depression is, but then it'll have little teeth marks. Almost looks like half of a railroad, like half of the railroad ties, but they're all facing in towards the center.
Yep,
that's depression. And I also just wanted to. We didn't really touch on contour lines before we went into terrain features, but contour lines are the little squigglies that you see on maps. And these will have the actual elevation numbered on certain lines. So you can look at a map is to help you translate a two-dimensional image into three-dimensional space. So the closer contour lines are together because each map will have different contour line intervals. So feet, meters, whatever. The closer contour lines are together, the steeper that change is, either up or down. The farther apart they are, the more gradual that elevation change is. Minor terrain features. So draw, spur, and cliff. A draw is the initial formation of a valley. So initial, it is not level ground. It is very jagged, very difficult to maneuver on. Once again, these contour lines are shaped into a U or a V. So
in a tactical situation, I would never, ever want to be in a draw or a valley. Forget that noise.
Yeah, draws are murder. But I'm focusing on the initial formation because a valley, a lot of space, gradual, slope down, into your fields, into your prairies, everything. This is not a draw. A draw is just beginning. You have almost no footing there. It's miserable country.
Climbing up steep slopes anyway is an absolute pain, but also having to do that out of a valley up sometimes an actual gradual slope, but 9 times out of 10 not so much, is if you have bad knees, it's absolutely murder, and it makes you have those depressive thoughts.
If you have good knees, they won't be good for long.
Yeah. especially if you have to climb up a few draws.
Honestly, one of my worst memories in Afghanistan was we were getting set in a position on this freaking ridge. And they're like, 7, go over to sergeant, whatever. And so I'm puff, I go down, and I come back up, and I hit a false freaking, false summit.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, finally, get to the top, and it's just a little dip on higher. Yep. And the team leader saw me, just started busting up laughing because just my face fell, and I was like, this is hell.
Yeah, that instant depressant.
Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds
well, I
me
had
of
the
that
shale. Do you remember the shale that was like 2 foot slabs?
Yeah.
And miserable stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that reminds me also of the time we were supposed to get picked up by a helo for an exfil, and it got into God, what do they call it? Red hour, pink hour, something like that. It's where like the night vision doesn't really work too great. But anyway, they wouldn't come pick us up because it was supposed to be dark. Yeah. So we had to hike out of, I guess, go ahead and bleep this out of valley from the top of those freaking mountains. And I can't tell you how many false summits I hit on the way out. And you motherfuckers had to come pick us up.
You know what was the worst for me? It was one mission. It was like one of those things where we left at like 2 a.m, 3 a.m, right? And
it was on several of those,
we flew in, and then we jumped off, nods on, all this stuff. But then as soon as the helo left, it was darkness. And it was darkness that I've never experienced before in my life. Like, nods down, I could not see my hand in front of my, like, it was just this oppressive darkness. And I remember my squad leader like coming up and like bumping into me and then like grabbing my shoulder and be like, 7, is that you? Yeah, I'm like, yeah, sorry, what's up? And he's like, okay, hey, we're moving. Where? Where are we moving? How did you get here? And, not just that, not that we couldn't see anybody, because that changed all our SOPs. Then we put like cat eyes on the back, so that everyone could see, right? So the Taliban could see us too. It was great. But then
they didn't have nods back then, not until we left the date, until that's when they had nods.
Goodness. But then like, as we were leaving, like I was like cracking my shins on like rocks that are size of like good sized dogs. And they were everywhere. I'm like, the hell is this place? And it wasn't until like 5 o'clock that we could actually see anything. I was like, this is ridiculous. We didn't even go anywhere. Like,
those were the missions that pissed me off because I went on several of those, and only I think 2 of them actually had clear skies. So the stars, the moon would actually give you any
give you loom.
If there was cloud cover, you weren't seeing ball.
No, you need loom, and that's what people don't understand about nods. It's not magic. There is so much that goes into actually utilizing nods effectively. Like, if you don't have good loom, good luck, man. You need something to magnify if you're going to use nods.
I mean, they do have that feature where you can actually turn on the artificial loom, but it only goes so far.
Right. Anyway, that was a fun rabbit trail.
Anyway, tangent. Hello, Patreon.
Hi, patrons. Spur. So, spur is a short, continuous line of higher ground. So that's normally drawn down the side of a ridge. These are your offshoots off your ridge. Yep. The little fingers that kind of spin down all the way down your ridge line. Fun little bit of topography there. There's your false summits and everything else.
Yeah, those are what we talked about.
A cliff is a vertical or near vertical abrupt change in the land. So you're walking. That is a cliff.
Yeah.
You're
walking, you're falling.
On a map is your it is your last contour line. And like a depression, it bears tick marks facing the low ground. So
Sometimes.
You better hope it does. So if you're looking at a map and you have this valley that goes down and then all the contour lines just stop and there's your tick marks all along, it's not a good time.
No, don't go that way. I mean, you can, but somebody's going to be scraping you off the ground with a spatula.
You can't if you're not a coward. Supplemental
Yeah, man, fall off the cliff.
Supplemental terrain feature. So cut and fill, these are both man-made. So a cut is where we've actually removed ground to cut through high ground. So think think like a railroad or a road where we've cut in the side. Yeah, right. So we've cut in the side of a mountain. That is a cut. So on a map, the contour lines just follow the cut. There may be little tick marks where you have that depression that'll be marked by the actual elevation change. And fill, also man-made, like we said, it's filling in of a low area. Can you think of a good example for a fill? I can't really think of anything.
Dude, I was just thinking, I was like, how the hell do I explain this? You do a fill and it becomes flat ground, like
yeah. Regardless,
or a hill, like I don't.
Regardless, on a map, the contour lines will follow the fill, so you'll be able to see it annotated. Will you actually have a felt change, on the ground? I do not know.
Oh, okay. So like you said, it is a man-made feature resulting from filling in a low area, usually to form a level bed for a railroad or a road.
Oh, okay. So the way to differentiate this on a map is you'll see looking at a map, being acquainted with a map, you'll see the natural flow of contour lines. A fill will not be natural because it's man-made. So you're going to see hard lines, straight lines, and that's how you'll be able to differentiate. But if you're following like a railroad track or a road, that's also going to be annotated with color.
And I mean, even if it doesn't have color on the map, like with the cuts, the tick lines will be going in. With the fill lines, they'll be going out.
Right.
So that's your easiest way of telling. It's about the only way of telling.
Yeah. So moving into actual land navigation, let's talk about pace count.
Yay, pace count.
Do you remember your pace count?
No, not at all. And it constantly changes. That is the thing about pace count. It is determined for each individual. And it's almost never the same for that individual. Have you ever noticed that? Like,
well,
we did like 3 or 4 pace counts and they were always different. And you just did the average.
Well, so you're betting on someone being able to walk the same way over uneven ground for 100 meters, right? That's how you get a good pace count. So are you going to have the same exact gait every single time? No. What if you try again in 6 months? No. It's going to be different. What if you have an injury? What if you lose or gain weight? What if? Right? So pace count is a determinant for being able to measure 100 meters. How many steps does it take you to walk 100 meters? And you use this when lane navigating, specifically when you're dead reckoning. So I'm here. I want to walk here. Is 100 meters. I have to shoot this azimuth and walk this many steps. That's your pace count. So a lot of people have pace count beads on a string of 550 chords. So you count every other step, and then every 10 steps you move a bead up or down depending on the system you have. Some guys use the what are they, like the quick release for shot cord? What are those called? You know what I'm talking about? Little cinch things?
Yeah. I've never seen somebody use those, but that's pretty cool.
Right? Better than beads.
Oh.
Anyway, just a system to help you remember. You were going to talk about Dead Reckoning.
Dead Reckoning. Dead Reckoning, also known as point navigation. Well, I guess it's technically point navigation, also known as Dead Reckoning.
It's Dead Reckoning.
You guys all called it Dead Reckoning. I always taught it as point navigation or Dead Reckoning. Regardless, it's the same freaking thing.
Because you were subhuman somehow. It's Dead Reckoning.
It's because I was smarter than you and better than you. Anyway, so Dead Reckoning, point navigation, it is the process of calculating one's position by estimating the direction and distance traveled rather than by using landmarks, astronomical observations, or electronic navigation methods. This is done by starting from a known point and strictly following a predetermined azimuth and distance. This can be done in 2 steps. Use a protractor and graphic scale to determine direction and distance from one point to another on a map. Then you use your compass and a means of measuring distance to apply that information on the ground. So you're literally shooting an azimuth with your compass and praying.
It's a little more complicated than that. But Dead Reckoning is finding a coordinate on the map and then finding it on the ground.
Which, if anybody's ever done land nav in a freaking forest at Fort Benning, can tell you that's a little harder than what that sounds like on paper.
Not if you had all the points written down in your notebook like you should have.
We're not going to go into that. But yes. So, anyway,
example.
An example of this is you plot a direction and a distance, then using your compass, pull out the correct azimuth to your direction of travel, find a landmark, also known as a steering mark on that bearing / azimuth, and just walking to it. That is Dead Reckoning. Point navigation right there. And once you reach your landmark, do it again. Shoot another azimuth and repeat that process over and over and over until you get to where you're going.
Shoot and walk, shoot and walk. This is done in short distances, small segments.
Yeah.
Because
that's all you can do.
The shorter distance, the smaller segment, the less room you have for error. Correct. Because once again, we'll have visuals of a protractor, of an azimuth that you guys can look at on our Instagram, on our Substack. But azimuth is a degree representation of direction, right? So when you shoot an azimuth, you're talking about a specific point. So you have to think, if you point straight ahead of you, and so you have to walk 10 feet, you probably won't deviate left or right walking that 10 feet.
Right.
But
yeah, you're not going to have much drift.
If you point and then you walk 100 feet, you have more of an opportunity to stray right or left. It's the same exact idea with Dead Reckoning. So you're trying to minimize that drift. And, during this navigation using Dead Reckoning, you're periodically using resection, using your azimuth, using your compass, your tools available, and terrain association to confirm your location as you go.
Right. This method is the easiest to teach and learn, but it also requires a very high level of control. Like you were saying, you literally have to keep shooting an azimuth. And you have to do it over short distances because, like you said, the slightest deviation from that azimuth, aim small, miss small. And if you're aiming far, you're going to miss if you deviate even a tenth of a degree. Like, you can miss that mark by, depending on how far you shoot that, you can miss that by a mile.
Well, and, if you're not completely sure of your location, you have to check that. Because if you're if you're somewhere where you don't think you are, or you think you're somewhere that you're not, and then you're off shooting azimuths and walking, that's a really big deal. That's a bad way. And all of this, so figuring out your location, double checking your location, actually shooting your azimuth, walking, stopping, shooting, this takes time. It's a very time consuming process. And then there's the Lord's way of land navigation.
95% of the time. I know I love to use 95, but I can't say all the time. So it's as close as I can get to it without actually sounding like it's all the time.
I'll say 99.
95% of the time.
I use terrain association literally 99% of the time. Unless if I absolutely had to. I would terrain associate until I was within 100 meters.
100%.
And then I would Dead Reckon. So terrain association. It is the ability to identify terrain features or landmarks on the ground by the contour intervals or landmark symbols depicted on maps. So is literally you being able to make the connection between what you see on a map and what you see on the ground. And then you are navigating using that information. So think of it this way. When you were a kid, when you were romping around, getting into trouble, till the streetlights turned on, when you
Guilty.
when you were trying to find the grocery store, the movie theater, the ballpark,
Your
girlfriend's house, anything,
Yeah.
you didn't dead reckon to get there. You used landmarks you knew. That's all terrain association is. That's it. So some tips to help get you there. Be sure that your map is properly oriented. Because if you're looking at a screwed up map, you're going to have a rough time actually, figuring out where you are on that map.
And I'm going to laugh.
And you'll probably cry later. Observe the...
I won't, because I won't be there.
Observe the steepness, the shape of your slopes, your relative elevations, the orientation of features in relation to your position, and the position of features you see. So if there is a hill right next to a saddle, or a depression right next to a ridgeline, find that on your map. Make sure that it's oriented in the correct way. So it's another check, another double tap to make sure that you are looking and operating off what you can see and experience, right?
Or you could be lucky to be somewhere near civilization and see a radio tower out there. Like, those aren't marked on maps.
Yes. To
And
a high degree of accuracy.
That is one of the easiest ways to actually do terrain association. Because if you can see that thing, you can see all the terrain in front of you. You can find out exactly where you are to a high degree of accuracy.
Well, that's actually what I did during our land out courses. So if I saw a radio tower, I know that this is here. Okay, which radio tower on my map is next to those two hills at around that elevation?
Mm-hmm.
And off you go.
Ta-da!
So that's another thing. So using all the tools, all the information at your disposal, right? So hydrography, water. If you see a creek, a river, a lake, a pond, a stock pond, man-made features, railroads, roads, buildings, vegetation, everything, anything and everything, right? All the information that you gather will be useful to you, utilizing terrain association. You're literally trying to figure out what you see on the map and make it make sense to what you're actually seeing on the ground.
I have said this before, and I will say it again because this does apply. Because your life is on the line. The only fair fight is the fight you win. And that does apply to land nav. Because you are trying to get somewhere alive. And if you get lost, you could probably die.
Yeah. Well, think about in an operational environment. You can't spend hours and hours, poring over your map trying to figure out where you are. You need to figure out where you are. You need to get where you're going, quickly.
You can literally listen to all the podcasts in the world. You can read all the books on it. But until you set a map down in front of you and actually go outside, go on your front porch and use it. Like, literally use it and practice. It's not that hard. But unless you do that, you're not going to be able to learn this. Period.
A really great tool for this that anybody can access is CalTopo. So caltopo.com. It is a software online where you can type in your location, type in any location, and get a map of that area. And you can change the filters, you can change the overlays on that map to where you can have a very, very efficient, very workable map for land navigation. So great tool there. We'll throw a link in the description for you guys.
And that brings us to handrails. Handrails are linear features. So we're talking roads, railroads, power lines, etc. These usually run roughly parallel to your direction of travel. You can use these to guide your way forward without actually having to pull out your compass and make precise work. So this will only work as long as the handrail follows your direction of travel. Because as we know, roads, railroads, highways, power line, well, not really power lines. Power lines can curve, but the rest definitely will curve. They will not follow your direction of travel completely. So you can use them to a certain point to help you guide your way, essentially. So a prominent terrain feature near this point is called a catching feature. This is what you're actually heading for that will actually get you back on your path.
Well,
I can't tell you how many times we tried land nav in the beginning, got lost, and had to find a road and handrail our way back to where we needed to be to our catching feature.
right. So the catching feature, that is the point where you know that you're going to have to part ways with your handrail. So that
Correct.
is right before the junction, right before a curve in the road and the railroad, what have you. But that is as close to that, that point, that stepping off point as you can get to. But I just want to say that handrails work very well with terrain association. So being able to quickly, looking around, oh, well, that railroad takes me, 3 clicks in the direction I need to go. And you can book it down that, kind of hugging that railroad, not obviously traveling on the railroad, but staying within the wood line. And you can make really great distance, in a good amount of time using that.
So the high tension power lines are probably one of your best bets in highly wooded area because they are actually usually pretty vegetation free. And you can just walk for miles because they're going to be going to civilization. So if you are lost, follow the power lines.
Right.
Unless you're in Chernobyl, and then you'll end up in Reactor 4. Don't do
Don't
that.
go to reactor 4. Pro tip.
Yeah, pro tip. So that brings us to actually using one of the tools besides the map, the compass. We've referenced this a bunch of times. Most of the time we're actually talking about a compass, we're talking about a lensatic compass. This is what we had in the Army. This is what we use in the military
This
constantly.
one's like a little compact. You open it up, has a little magnifying glass in there, has the little bit of wire that goes straight down through the window, so you actually look at a terrain feature as you're shooting your azimuth.
Yep. Handy little thing. Didn't really use it too much, but it's a handy thing.
Right. But there are many kinds. So lensatic, there's
Oh yes.
oh Lord, I don't even know the vernacular for the one you mainly use on map. It's normally see-through, card shaped.
It's like an orienteering compass essentially.
Orienting compass, something like that.
I don't know. It's clear plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes has a ruler on it. It's helpful to a point.
Yeah. Great tool. So a great example, someone actually walking through how to use that type of compass is Redbird Tactical on Instagram. We'll throw a link in the description for them,
Yeah.
but they have story highlights that cover all this information very well, very succinctly, very great information. So they're a great resource for that. So compass utilizing magnetism is sensitive to metal. What do you know?
Correct.
So if you are, running and gunning with your rifle, then you go out to pull a bearing with your compass, you're gonna have to throw that rifle behind you.
Mhm.
Otherwise, that's going to be thrown off. So machine guns, telephone, barbed wires, trucks, tanks, high tension power lines, anything with a
Steel helmets.
anything with a lot of metal is going to affect that compass. So keep that in mind.
So typically there is a recommended separation distance for these, and it kind of depends on what it is. Usually your high tension power lines, because it has such strong electrical currents, they recommend you stay about 55 meters away. So that's what, like 165 feet
Yeah, something
ish.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So 55 meters. A truck, tank, field gun, whatever, big pieces of metal, about 18 meters. Telephone, barbed wires, about 10 meters, so 30 feet. Machine guns, you're going to want to stay about 6 feet away from them. Steel helmet or rifle, half a meter, so a foot and a half, somewhere in there. So just throw that rifle behind your back or set it down on the ground, and you're good. So also on a map and in real life, there are actually 3 types of north. It seems kind of redundant, but it's true. True north is the actual true geographic north.
North
It
Pole.
is not the North Pole. Well, okay, so technically, yes, it is the geographic North Pole. After that, you have your magnetic north. This is your actual North Pole. Funny enough, this is the north based on your compass bearing. So magnetic north. Compass has magnets. There you go. After that, you have your grid north. This is your north based on what's on your map. This is the direction the map faces. That's your north. These three things do not ever line up. Like, ever. Have never seen true north, magnetic north, and grid north ever line up.
That's important to note because when we're talking about shooting bearings with your compass, each map in the marginal information
Key.
It's going to have what's called a declination angle. So this angle is what you actually take into account when you are shooting a bearing on your compass. You have to add or subtract that angle in order to translate that to your map, in order to actually navigate using that map effectively. All right, guys, if you're still here, thanks for joining us. Thank you for listening. We know this was like drinking from a garden hose, but this was our crash course into land navigation. We fully intend on breaking this down fully into equal and separate parts later, but we wanted to present you guys something to get you off the ground. The big takeaway I want you guys to take from this is that everything that we've laid out today, these are all tools. And the best way to utilize these tools for actually navigating, for actually going through lane navigation, is to use them together. So don't just rely on terrain association. Don't just rely on dead reckoning. Find your happy medium. Use all these tools, make it work. That is by far the best solution to the problem of lane navigation.
And practice all of them. Like, what works for somebody may not work for you.
Right.
And what works for you may not work for somebody else. You may be a dead reckoning person. The other person may be terrain association.
Yeah. And something that's always stuck with me, the best way to learn information is to get prepared to teach it. That's where you find your holes. That's where you find what you do and don't understand fully. And if you're teaching someone else, you're making the community better. That's fulfilling our mission statement. So keep after it. Once again, guys, a little bit of housekeeping. We just kicked off our Patreon. We just kicked off our Discord. You can find those at the link in our description. You can find that at the link in our link tree. But now and going forward, we are the Hard Time Strongman podcast. Drawing up a better class of man. Thanks for joining us.
Stay in the fight.
Stay in the fight.